respond you to the Boodja Nyoitch rally of protest against the mining global giant Rio Tinto, against FMG, against BHP Billiton, Gloff and all of the other mining companies in this state that have dug holes for the past 200 years on sacred sites and have blown them to pieces by dynamite for the wealth and the privilege to get to the minerals that lay under the grounds that Aboriginal people own. We are the people of the chains and we are the people of the shackles. Australians don't care for much at all. They care very least for land and for the water, for they see the fish float dead up on the shores of our great oceans, the rivers run dry, the fish on the banks of the rivers, our forests burnt and destroyed, our mountains and our hills blown apart. Australians care for very little when it comes to the beauty of our land, and the time has come for all of us as a people risen to either appreciate the beauty of our land and protect her, or for the stain of a blood-dirty dollar. It's very, very important that for the next moments that you listen. We are in receipt of two documents. The first document is a document sent from the CEO of Rio Tinto, Chris Salisbury, and the second is from the people that are the cultural custodians of the land where the Juukan Caves were blasted. In these letters, you can actually see the answer. You can see the deceit. You can see the lies. And then you can see the way through Section 18 of the Western Australian Aboriginal Heritage Act and how they used that against the people and then turned and blamed the misunderstandings between the company and the custodians of that site as simply a mistake. We will read 3 paragraphs of the letters and I want you to comprehend what you hear. It's so important to understand how Rio Tinto came like a thief in the night and blew away a site that held human occupation evidence for over 46,000 years. That surpassed the last ice age, blew it apart without any consciousness and blew it apart for the wealth of the power of money.
For the first letter, I'll be reading the Rio Tinto CEO's response to his colleagues, and this is a part of the letter. It is important to recognise that we have discussed the matter of the Juukan shelters with the PKKP since 2003 and got consent to advance the mine through a Section 18 agreement in 2013. We were able to further understand the significance of the Juukan sites when we did, and the excavation work around the shelters with PKKP in 2014, and have worked with the PKKP to remove precious artefacts, 7,000 of them. Since this time, we had regular, formal meetings with the PKKP, and these are opportunities for us to share the mine plan and discuss concerns. We also have many informal engagements. We have no record of the PKKP asking us to stop mining in the Juukan area until mid-May when the blasting was already loaded. We delayed the activity of the blast to see what we could do to stop it, but after a safety assessment of the situation, we had to go ahead. At no point did we deliberately set out to harm or disrespect the PKKP. This is not in line with our values or the way we do business. This is the statement from the PKK people themselves, their media release. The PKKP Aboriginal Corporation has, on numerous occasions since 2013, communicated to Rio Tinto the significance of the Juukan Gorge, in particular, the rock shelters in the area. This information was made clear in independent ethnographic report in 2013, a report by Scarp Archaeology in 2015, a documentary commissioned by the Yamaji Malpa Aboriginal Corporation for PKKPAC and funded and currently in possession of Rio Tinto in 2015, in which traditional owners were interviewed at the gorge about its significance. On October 28, 2019, during a site visit, PKKPAC Culture and Heritage Manager Dr. Heather Bilth told Rio Tinto Brockman 4 Mine Operations Manager Brad Webb on the significance of the rock shelters. In that conversation, Mr. Webb advised Dr. Bilth that there was no plans to extend the mine and Rio Tinto had been monitoring Juukan Gorge for vibration effects of local blasting. The high significance of the sites was further relayed to Rio Tinto by PKKPAC as recently as March. At all times, the PKKPAC has been direct and explicit in the archaeological and ethnographic significance of these rock shelters and the importance that they be preserved. For Rio Tinto to suggest otherwise is truly incorrect.
Always was,
always will be
Aboriginal land. Always was,
always will be
Aboriginal land. Today we've gathered here as proud Bibbulmun Noongar peoples from our 14 great nations in the southwest. We come supported by the Yinjirbunji people of Roban in their fights against FMG and their recent wins in the High Court, and we talk on the recent absolute atrocity of the loss of the Juukan Caves and the history, not just to the custodians, but to Australia and to the world. This is a crime of atrocity to the environment that is of a global scale and should be dealt with under the international courts of law against crimes of intent to destroy the environment that holds absolute historical significance that this global monster here destroyed in moments. The Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation is a grassroots movement through its symbolics of Kayana. Kayana means a place of value, a corroboree ground, a meeting place. I hold a 350-year-old Kylie. You may know it as a boomerang. Our language is a Kylie. This Kylie was made and is in our possession. We repatriated from Belgium, is our direct connection to our old people and the most oldest living culture on the oldest landmass on the face of the earth. The Juukan Gorge was destroyed by Rio Tinto using Section 18 of the Western Australia's Heritage Act, which allows a developer to destroy an Aboriginal site in Western Australia following approval by the Western Australia Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. However, 3 years after the Western Australian Heritage Act became law, the Whitlam government passed the Racial Discrimination Act, which made it an offence to discriminate against people on the basis of their race. We, strangely enough, see that the West Australian politicians have failed to update the Aboriginal Heritage Act to take into account the Racial Discrimination Act, and to this day the Heritage Act allows developers such as FMG, Rio Tinto, Clough, BHP, a right of appeal against the Section 18 by the ministers but doesn't allow a right of appeal by the cultural custodians of the heritage sites that they blow up. Yes, and that is right. Aboriginal people have no rights to appeal against the Section 18 to blow up our cultural sites, but developers do. So by giving the developers the right of appeal and denying a right of appeal to the Aboriginal custodians, Western Australia's Aboriginal Act is an open, discriminatory and racist, and it contradicts the white laws of the Commonwealth's Racial Discrimination Act and is also unconstitutional because the Australian Constitution states that if a Commonwealth law contradicts a state law, the Commonwealth trumps the state. And so before any changes take effect to the West Australian Act, before any more sites are blown away, we call upon Minister Ben Wyatt from the state to guarantee Aboriginal people's rights under the Racial Discrimination Act to be exercised and at the very least have the same rights as the mining companies now enjoy. The organisers of this rally call for the immediate resignations, terminations of both the Federal Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Ken Wyatt, and the State Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Ben Wyatt, for allowing this atrocity to go ahead when they knew, Farewell knew, that the dynamite was going to blast a 50,000-year-old sacred site, never to be recovered again, and they allowed it to happen. Shame. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Comprehend this. Rio Tinto knew of the sacred and the significance of the Juukan Caves, as the letter that was read by Josh indicates. Before they blast, they commissioned a documentary that paid for the old men who said clearly that you were not to enter the cave site for mining interests ever. Rio Tinto, even after hearing this, paid for and commissioned a documentary that they funded and were told years before about the significance of the caves, created the delusion by Rio Tinto of the so-called misunderstandings that gave Rio Tinto the filthy trick to turn it around and blame the cultural custodians of the misunderstandings that followed the blast, and then Rio Tinto simply said sorry. We are going now to have one breath. We're going to play Hunger. Hunger's opening lines states, elite black academics signing away our rights to industrialists who blow up our people's sacred sites to extract the minerals, then create a tourist attraction upon the burial grounds of our people lost in action.
Yeah. Elite black academics signing away the rights to industrialists to blow up our people's sacred sites to extract the minerals, then create a tourist attraction upon the burial grounds of our people lost in action. Yeah, young see our spiritual stories behind the glass, symbols from beginning of a time in our past, invested in foreign auctions as the hammer hits hard for the gain of wealth that's sold to the upper middle class. What the dancers sway to the didgeridoo like the totems of our older was the way that we move, but it's in the white man's auditoriums, dude. Yo, they selling our culture for entertainment and gratitude. Nah. Our flag of resistance is now pacified as it flies from the government buildings high in the sky. Our office of mining companies, will we survive as the government passes another policy? A lie, yeah. A hunger greater than a dream, beauty as it seems is shattered and the ugliness is free, yeah. A hunger greater than a dream, beauty as it seems is shattered and the ugliness is free, yeah. A hunger greater than a dream, beauty as it seems is shattered and the ugliness is free, yeah. A hunger greater than a dream, beauty as it seems is shattered and the ugliness is free. Some elders are empty, as they stand alone. The absurdity of welcome.
Where is the slingshot? Said David before he slayed Goliath. We stand and we sit here today as that slingshot, united against a common enemy, capitalism, commercialism, and the death of our earth. Junga Minya Bominga. The smell of the white man is killing us as we enter into a spiritual warfare to protect our culture from desecration by industrialists and the wealth of privilege from the Western world's greed. We look across the skies that encapsulate our humanity, united in one blood, one with the solidarity needed to empower the changes of shift that is shared with the past, present, and our future generations, and the biblical core that gives birth to our law grounds, the oldest ceremonial grounds on the earth that was created by the Woggle, the great rainbow serpent. We never ceded our cultural sovereignty, and we never will. This country was invaded and stolen by British invaders by forced occupation 240 years ago, plunging the Union Jack into the sacred heart of our Mother Earth and claiming it for the British Empire. As our forests were burnt and destroyed, our rivers and waterways polluted, our hills and mountains blown away, our deserts desecrated, they took it all and they made it their own. There's a metaphor. If a tree falls in a forest that no one hears, did the sound ever exist? You could say, just like if a dynamite blasts echoes out from a site deep in the northwest where no one sees or hears it other than those who triggered it, would anyone know? On the Sunday before the opening of Reconciliation Week and Sorry Day in Australia, Rio Tinto came like a thief in the night and blasted a 50,000-year-old site where human occupation was determined to exist for over 46,000 years, surpassing the last ice age. What a massive devastation to the earth, to human history and all of mankind. Within the cave's most inner sectors was found a 28,000-year-old kangaroo bone sharpened into a tool, along with a 4,000-year-old hair pelt and thousands of other objects highly significant. In one of the caves was found the remnants of a whole campfire pit where an ancient group of people consumed a kangaroo meal. This was an extremely important archaeological find. This is actually one of the oldest sites ever discovered where a group consumed food on this planet. As these caves were desecrated and smashed apart, I believe the CEO of Rio Tinto already had the ink to paper writing his futile apology. To the traditional owners of the site, there was no misunderstanding, and again Rio Tinto knew exactly what they intended to do, and they done it. The Federal Minister Ken Wyatt said that it was simply a mistake. The State Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Ben Wyatt, said he did not even know that the blasts were going ahead. Mark McGowan, the Premier, in a recent interview stated that our government will ensure that such a destruction will never again occur. What type of futile responses are these after such a travesty based on deceitful lies of a global mining conglomerate such as Rio Tinto mean after the damage is done? These global industrialists are more powerful than any government, and we as the people are the only defence against their dirty deeds that are done dirt cheap. The dynamite sites that blew away the Juukan Caves could be equated to the bombing of the Buddhist temples by the Taliban in Afghanistan. To if a multi-international mining company discovered a uranium deposit worth billions of dollars under either the Egyptian pyramids or that of the Mayan temples, and at the darkest hour inserted dynamite into the pyramids intersections of the tomb of Tutankhamun and blew the pyramids off the face of the world. What type of outcry from the international communities and governments would there be? The media in this country has gotten away with polluting people's minds against us and are totally responsible for the hatred of racism that seeps through their headlines. That turns our human rights into debacles of social commentary, with lies and deceits of who we are and our traditional rights to this land that they stand on. They are conservative and censored by the political masters of whom they serve and are entrusted to mainstream and maintain the status quo of the misleading news that suppresses our human rights. The only hope we have is that the international media focuses on this issue here today for what it really is, and it broadcasts it around the world. Power to the people! 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 Perth is a city built on the bedrock of environmental carnage and the death of Aboriginal people. It boldly promotes it above the highest of the skyscrapers in the city block. Woodside, FMG, PHP, Chevron, Clough and others. Western Australia is the resources hub of Australia. The sector produces more than 50 different minerals from 1,000 operating mines. For 5 of these minerals from Western Australia that's produced equates to 10% of the world's populated needs. The gross domestic product of Western Australia is made up vastly from the mining sector and is $196 billion per year. $196 billion a year. It equates to near 15% of the total Australia's GDP. During the recent coronavirus, it was clearly seen in Perth that there is and has always been a massive homeless population. The continued incarceration of our young youth under the 3 strikes and you're in laws. We suffer a massive suicide pandemic that is forever increasing the mental health problems in our community, affecting a massive percentage of the populations, a never-ending increase in domestic violence, with little, if any, resources in the community to deal with it. There is the continued family dysfunctions and the continued suffering of our little children. Where is the monetary wealth that we as the people need to create a better outcome and the social changes for our people most in need? Per head, per population, it is us, the Aboriginal people, that make up the vast majority of those most in need. It's a social and a political disgrace and cannot be hidden any longer under the so-called needs of change and the policy development that we keep hearing about. However, we never see the results of change. Gina Rinehart's personal income by the same time that this rally begun and by the time it ends will be $4.5 million. I say you can measure your wealth by those things that you can hold. Gina Rinehart can no longer hold even her own children throughout the wealth of her empire has torn apart. It's not dark yet, but we're getting there. In October 2014, in accordance to a coordinated day of defiant action, workers organised protests at Rio Tinto's operations in over a dozen countries as part of an industrial global union response. They stated, "Our message to Rio Tinto is that the union movement is here to stay, and we will fight and campaign against Rio Tinto until the company shows respect, gives dignity to its workers and the Indigenous peoples on whose land it operates." This global mining giant simply turned away from its ethics and responsibilities and threw them to the wind. Because here we are in 2020, where on the Sunday prior to Reconciliation Week and Sorry Day, they blew away the sacredness forever. Rio Tinto sent an apology to the PKKP people. The same type of apology sent to the stolen generations by the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd in 2008. How many apologies will there be for the genocide that has raged against our people for the past 240 years in this country? Shallow, without meaning or substance, trite politics at its best. I remember Nukumba under the then Premier Charles Court in 1980. It was the very first protest that I ever attended, and I participated in raising our fists in the air as the AMAX giant drilled and tore away at the Goanna site, dreaming in an exploratory drill that never located the oil that they so desperately wanted to find. Bob Hawke's son, Stephen Hawke, said to the people of Nukumba, don't worry, my father is head of the ACTU. He has said that the wildcat drills will not operate. They will rust in the fields. 2 weeks later, the wildcat drills sunk deep into the sacred ground, destroying the people of Nukumba forever, and the unions fell weak. May the old people of Nukumba rest in peace. The protests at the Old Swan Brewery, the dreaming site of the Woggle, smashed and developed by the Western Australian government. The continued raping of the sacred waters of Millstream to water the town of Karratha, to feed the mining industries in the Pilbara, the Indigenous people of the Argyle area that were dispossessed from the Juraks, who blocked the great northern rivers and created the dam systems that fed the Argyle Mining Company. And these great and proud peoples became simply known as the Ditch Warriors. In the fringes of townships around the East Kimberley, a miserable and suffering life that they mourned the name of simply becoming known as the Ditch Warriors. The great Wongai nations that fell to the land grab that created the richest mile of any part of the world, known as the Golden Mile of the Super Pit, the richest mile of ground on the earth. White Australia simply turned away at the plight of these great peoples, the Wongai people of the Western Desert Block. Our Mother Earth, she's finite. Our Mother Earth, she's worth fighting for. Our Mother Earth is worth dying for. You either stand with the oppressor or you stand with the oppressed. There is no middle ground of convenience that you can serve both. The Minderoo Foundation, set up by FMG under Andrew Forrest, states that their mission is to stop modern-day slavery. The iron ore that he steals from the lands he does not own is shipped to China, where the workers are enslaved by the Chinese government. With little salary, they are bedded in extremely small rooms where they sleep at night, ready for the next shift for just a few hours before they awake and are back in the factories. This is modern-day slavery. From stolen lands, they manufacture products that make the massive Chinese companies rich beyond our imagination. This anti-modern day slavery mission is a massive hypocrisy of tricks by mirrors of delusion that people like him are masters of. Their mission is walk free. We can end modern day slavery in our generation. Australia's past has been built on crimes against humanity, and the government should be taken and charged in the world's war crime courts for what they have done to Aboriginal people in this country. During the past decades, the Yindjibarndi people of the Pilbara have been fighting the FMG giant Andrew Forrest as he has relentlessly destroyed their sacred sites and turned their people against each other. I have a letter sent here today to the rally by Michael Woodley, who has given his whole life to fight this battle against this giant, and I'll ask Josh to read the letter of support from the Yindjibarndi people of Roban.
When FMG built a Solomon Hub iron ore mine in Yindjibarndi country, the company, with support of a breakaway group, destroyed a lot of important cultural sites, just like what has just happened to the Juukan Gorge rock shelters, as well as so many other important Aboriginal places in Western Australia. Yindjibarndi people have already made a claim for exclusive native title rights over the area in 2003, and the federal court ruled in their favour in July 2017. But of course, FMG decided to appeal the umpire's decision. But last year, all 5 federal court judges rejected FMG's appeal, upheld the original decision that Yindjibarndi had exclusive possession and rights. But FMG and its founder, Twiggy Forrest, are pretty bad losers. So they appealed the decision yet again, this time to the High Court in Canberra. Well, the week before last, the High Court dismissed FMG's appeal and said that their case was undeserving and that they weren't interested in hearing it, and ordered FMG to pay all the Yindjibarndi's legal costs. Now the Yindjibarndi can lodge a compensation claim against FMG for the loss of sacred and significant cultural sites, the loss of economic rights, and spiritual harm, which is expected to cost the company millions of dollars.
The sun is shining as it has always done. They're destroying our earth as they've always done. People are dying as they've always done. It's time to stand up and fight harder as we have always done. All around the world, rubber bullets fall from the sky like black rain. Take the hands of your children and your grandchildren and talk to them about the history of what's happened in this country and around the world. Keep them safe and nurtured by truth and the wisdom of the pain and the suffering of our old people, and what they died for, trying to defend, to keep alive with just wood fibre against gunpowder and alloyed steel. For if we never hear of how great our grandfathers' grandfathers were, we will never know how great we are. I am a depressed poet. As the last tree is ripped from the earth and water is no more, and the earth empowers stronger energies to heal the massive ruptures of its life energies that are often referred to as natural disasters, you will glimpse back to look for us and we will be gone. As the last human being enters the gravesite for all of humanity, they will realise that the last offering to a burnt, blistered earth is a great hole that will be a testament of your greed, your lust, and your power for money. May our campfires burn forever. And just don't give up. Don't give up against this most massive fight that we as Indigenous peoples have worldwide against the genocide of our mother, the earth. For we as Aboriginal people For we as Noongar people, Indigenous people, we know one thing. We could never own the earth, for the earth owns us. The earth owns us. Rio Tinto, get the fuck off our sacred land. So before that song's performed by Fluent, I'll read the letter that will go to Rio Tinto. To the Board of Directors of Rio Tinto, including all your major investors and shareholders, we do not accept the futile explanation of Rio Tinto that there was simply a misunderstanding between the company and the traditional owners of the area in which the Juukan Caves are located. It has been found that Rio Tinto knew about the extreme significance of these caves as early as 2014. The following list of demands of the Aboriginal people of Australia must be acknowledged and implemented effective immediately. We as Aboriginal people demand a full and a comprehensive admission of guilt by Rio Tinto of purposefully destroying known archaeological and cultural significant sites to extend their mining operations within that area. We demand a 100-kilometre buffer to be placed around the cave that was affected by the blast site to ensure no additional mining activity will further destroy what ancient cultural material remains in these affected caves. It is our wish that the remaining ancient cultural material be left in these caves untouched by mining activity. All mining activity within Western Australia must cease immediately until a significant Aboriginal cultural and historical sites are fully protected by being listed on the UNESCO World Heritage Sites lists to protect what little significant sites remain. It is clear, like looking through water, that the Western Australia Heritage Act is not sufficient enough to ensure that sites are adequately protected. In addition, even with proposed changes to the Act, we believe it will still not be enough to prevent further loss to significant material at these sites, as it has always been the case that mining interests are constantly prioritised over Aboriginal cultural heritage issues. We demand the immediate termination of Chris Salisbury as CEO of Rio Tinto. We demand the immediate termination of Chris Salisbury as CEO of Rio Tinto. As he stated that he himself is fully accountable for this tragic loss to both the Aboriginal and the human history. The willful destruction of these ancient caves are a travesty, and the company must be made to rectify what they have done, and concrete steps taken to ensure that a destructive event of this magnitude never happens again. It is the Aboriginal intent to further this cause and to seek to pursue Rio Tinto to be charged under the international courts of prosecuting environmental crimes as part of the Hague jurisdiction and further to the United Nations International Court of Justice. May our campfires burn forever. Kaya Kayana. Kaya Kayana.
Yo, we listen to the stories as the elders again explain how your culture flourished before the Europeans came. Find why it's important your strength must never wane. For Nyungas need the spiritual like dry land needs rain. See contemporary, traditional come together on stage. Guitars weep and drummers thump in this anguish rage. Her fear, frustration escape the poet's cage while haunting digits echo deep from a forgotten age. Observe the women dancing, weaving to sing a song. Histories, mysteries from whence your soul belongs. Forget urban landscapes, go back to where you were strong. Search for hidden answers from which his spirit belongs. Here rhythmic black performers cause vast crowds to sway. Soulful mesmic lyrics put broken hearts on display. But words of hope and freedom offered a brand new day. As daylight kisses darkness, children laugh, dance and play. A means to survive, from which Noongar strive. Our culture on display, celebrating indigenous ways. A means to survive, from which Noongar strive. Our culture on display, celebrating indigenous ways. Yeah, hey. Yeah, we been through the worst, still we soldier on. Still our culture strong, peace to my brothers still holding on, hold it on. Stay staunch when you're told you're wrong. Pretty mad if you roll along. We need more love for all of the brothers up in the forefront, showing us how we should ball up. It's all love. If you want more cuz, then say the peeps. We speak in peace, but we need release. Believe in me, I seen the streets, but I know there's a better way for my brothers now. Keep a family bond strong and my cousins round, cause I'm proud that you a family man. You done a lot more than your family can, and that's the kind of stuff that will warm my heart. You ain't showing straight for unity when we're torn apart. All we need to really do is form a start. Knowledge is where I fall apart, I saw the spark. A means to survive, from which Noongar strive. Our culture on display, celebrating indigenous ways. Means to survive, from which Noongar strive. Our culture on display.
Aboriginal activists have taken their fight to Rio Tinto headquarters over the blasting of a 46,000-year-old heritage site. The mass gathering seeing more than 300 protesters packed into an area unable to adhere to social distancing regulations.
United in their numbers, but not necessarily apart. Hundreds gathering today in the city, flouting social distancing rules to fire a shot at a mining giant.
It would be equated to blowing up the pyramids of Egypt.
Today claiming Rio Tinto knew about the significance of the caves in 2014 and that the Aboriginal Heritage Act, designed to protect such sites, is stacked against traditional owners.
We're calling for the resignation of the CEO, the resignations of both the federal and the state Aboriginal Affairs ministers.
Noongar elder Robert Eggington is now delivering a letter of demand, walking from Central Park into the headquarters of Rio Tinto.
We do not accept the futile explanation of Rio Tinto that there was simply a misunderstanding.
We are committed to restoring our relationships with Indigenous communities and the PKKP people. Thank you.
Under new legislation we're bringing forward, these things will be more closely examined so these sorts of things wouldn't occur in the future.
Rio Tinto now conducting a review of the destruction of the sites.
Always will be.
Just like the Taliban and the Buddha statues, after multinational mining company Rio Tinto annihilates 46,000-year-old archaeology and culture in Australia. Coming up in today's Going Underground, but first, mainstream media around the world have correctly been covering the injustices of racial capitalism in the wake of the George Floyd murder in Minnesota. But Australia, where Indigenous peoples are incarcerated at a rate 4 times greater than the proportion of African Americans jailed in the US, has not been front-page news. And as multinational mining companies destroy all trace of cultures that are 46,000 years old, is Australia committing crimes against humanity? Joining me now from Perth in Australia is the director of the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation, Robert Edgington, who has been campaigning for the protection of sacred sites from capitalist exploitation. Rio Tinto has apologised and said it was a misunderstanding when it destroyed the 46,000-year-old archaeology in the Juukan Gorge on May the 24th during this coronavirus pandemic. Can you forgive Rio Tinto for destroying it and annihilating the Putukunti, Kurama and Pinkura people's culture?
Well, of course you never could forgive them, and you can't forgive other companies like BHP, Woodside, FMG. They're all environmental bandits that have, capitalised on the wealth of the minerals that lay under the ground of Aboriginal people's land. They export those minerals to places like China. It's a massive economical return to this country, and Australia grows very wealthy and privileged in the Western sense of finance. And Aboriginal people to whom, reside in remote communities that own that land and those minerals are impoverished to degrees of third world conditions.